Hello, this is Yahweasel, and this is AMA 2. It's been years since the first time I did an Ask Me Anything, and this is the second one. And then just to add extra nonsense to it, on the day I planned to actually record this, I was sick. And so now it's been a couple more days. But anyway, so I have yahweasel.tumblr.com/ask set up so that anybody can ask me anonymous questions there. And every extraordinarily long period of time, apparently, I specifically ask people to ask me questions on there, and then I'll go through them. I have taken all of the questions that were asked since the last AMA I did. Unfortunately, that means that, there were a few that people asked immediately after the last AMA, so years ago, and then a bunch that people asked, like, in the last month when I asked. So there's a little bit of a weird mix. But I've taken all of those questions, I have randomized them. I didn't randomize this. I intended to randomize these, opened the wrong file, and I'm actually reading these from most recent to least recent. Sorry about that. Meant to randomize, didn't randomize. Some of them are non-anonymous to me, but they are all going to be anonymous to you. I'm not giving any names. Most of them are anonymous to me. That's fine. And like I said, I randomized them, so I'm just going to go through them in a random order. I'm not being very pithy thus far, but I'm going to try to be shorter with my answers than I was last time, because that video went on forever. First question. I saw that you did a playthrough of Sword and Fairy 5 prequel, Legend of Sword and Fairy 5 prequel, of course. Do you have any plans for any of the other Sword and Fairy games? I have no plans. I'm not opposed to it. That game took so long that, like, if I was to play one of those per year, then that would mean I'm playing two of them at the same time. So, I'm not opposed to playing other ones. DC was such a sport for staying for a game that turned out to be that long. But I have other things I want to play too. So it takes a very long time. So I have no plans, but I am unopposed to doing so. Anonymous asked, would you consider doing an interview about your time running Craig? So those of you who only know me through Let's Playing don't know what this is. I wrote an incredibly popular bot for Discord called Craig. It is a voice channel recording bot. It remains hugely popular. It is the best voice channel recording bot for Discord, and I don't run it anymore. The experience of running that bot as it became very popular was almost enough to make me racist. You can look at my previous AMA for what I'm talking about there. It was not a good experience, and it was not good in a lot of ways. But it led me to make a new piece of software on Ennuicastr, which I am having a much better time with. It is not draining my soul as much. Anyway, so the actual question was, would you consider doing an interview about your time running Craig? Yeah, of course. Yeah, obviously. I'm not, like, ashamed of that bit of my history. I'm glad that it's in the past, but I mean, I'll talk about it. I'll certainly, I'll have some unhappy things to say about Discord and what an awful business they are, awful technology mainly. Yeah, I'll do an interview about it. Sure, just ask. Next question. What do you think your current audience enjoys you playing the most? Indie titles, such as, the itch.io one-offs or Bob Is You. Retro games, like Super Mario Bros. On Sharp X1. That was less retro game, more, obscure, terrible game. There's like two categories of retro games, really. Retro awful and retro good. That was retro awful. And also, I didn't play it on the Sharp X1. I played it on the, NEC PC 88? Yeah, that's the one. Bootlegs like Barber Battle Saga or Link to the Past for NES. Yeah, I played both of those. Multiplayer or co-op, such as the negative input latency Super Mario World, or something else not listed here. So my experience seems to be that I gain viewers that are watching for a particular game, and then most of them don't stick around and some of them do. And as a consequence, what they enjoy is quite diverse because they all came from somewhere else. And so my current audience is those who enjoy the current game mostly, and then a small cohort who, and thank you very much for this, would mostly watch me play just about anything. I do want to do more multiplayer or co-op things. Obviously, in between these two AMAs, I started a channel with Lord Pi, and then he went to the moon, so we haven't made any videos on that channel in a while. Yeah, so I don't have, like, the contacts for co-op stuff sort of come about organically, and I don't presently have any, like, co-op stuff to do, but otherwise, I mean, yeah, a mix is it, and I do run a poll now, and the poll has become a bit of a joke, because essentially every game that I put on the poll gets about equal votes, and so I'm doing random ballot as my pseudo-democratic system. I take a poll, but then I just randomly select using the number of votes as the weight of each option. So I think that, you know, the most important thing really is that it's enjoyable, because if I sound like I'm having an awful time, well, people do enjoy that, but in you know, so yeah, so it can't be something that's going to be boring. It can be enjoyable for me, or it can be enjoyable for the audience. So long as it's not something boring, I feel like those who usually watch my videos will be happy. Next question. Aside from don't create a bad bootleg, are there any things to take away or learn from bootleg games that you cannot, or probably would not, learn from officially licensed titles, such as bootleg game developers being more willing to experiment with different ideas, even if obviously just for the money? I don't think... So, there's two categories of bootlegs here. There's the purely money-grubbing bootlegs, that are, they're purely money-grubbing. So things like, you know, Final Fantasy VII for NES, there's nothing to learn from that. That's dumb. It was, you know, it's all stolen. There's no new original ideas there. There is another way for bootlegs to exist, which is certain platforms, you need a license to legally even release software for it. Technically speaking, that isn't like an actual, it is not legally possible for them to place such a restriction on software, but, you know, like, to release an NES cartridge, you're supposed to have the Nintendo seal of approval, and if you don't, that's not a crime. It's not illegal. They can't make that illegal. But it's certainly like against the goals of Nintendo for the NES. So for platforms that have restricted distribution, there's this whole other area of bootlegs that are bootleg not in the actual media in the game, but in the game being released at all. And those, I feel like there's more of a lesson for the Nintendos of the world, of just like, there is no way that their just the awful policies towards everything with respect to copyright is actually benefiting them, and we have certainly entered the era. So like earlier game consoles were they were usually sold at a loss, and then the company made money on licensing to the game sellers. So the games were sold, obviously, for way more than the physical material cost. The console was sold as a loss, and then the Nintendo or whatever, Nintendo, Sega, whoever, would make up for it with the games. They would license the right to distribute the games. That era is over, but consoles are still behaving like it's not, and that is what they should learn from the bootleggers, of like, If you don't have even a legitimate economic interest, so your only interest is just being a dick, then that is not the right way to run a railroad. That is not how modern game consoles ought to work. I'm gonna move on. That's a depressive question. Next question. What is something that you feel game developers of the past did well or added to their games that modern game devs seem to ignore or hide as much as possible from the average gamer? Honest answer, nothing. I don't think that this is actually... So, the phenomenon being hinted at here is this idea that, games were harder in the old days, or games experimented more in the old days, or that games have sort of the game development concepts have sort of ossified, and they're they only do just the same thing over and over again. But the thing is, so all the experimentation still happens, and it happens with indie games, and it's not like the experimentation has been pushed into indie games. It's just that previously there were only indie games, and now a huge area of like AAA games has emerged, but indie games never went away. There were always indie games as well, and it's always going, in any area, you need a sort of smaller, more nimble group that can sort of take the blow of not making a bunch of sales because it's just a smaller group, to do any real experimentation, and that's fine. That's like capitalism. That's how capitalism has to work. So I don't think that this is like actually valid. I think that modern games are just as creative and just as diverse as older games, and sometimes it works its way up, and then ideas make their way into the quote-unquote AAA game, and sometimes they don't, and that's fine too. But so like the comparison, so best game ever made, Portal 2. Portal 2 is the best game ever made. The original Portal, it started as, like, before it was Portal, when it was an indie game, it started as, like, the university project of some students. And then Valve went, that's brilliant, we're buying that, by which I mean we're buying, we're hiring all of the developers of it and buying the rights to it, and turned that into Portal, and then developed it into Portal 2. And so this very indie game, that I guess probably never was actually released as an indie game, I don't know that bit of the history, but this, indie game in potentia, the ideas were good and evolved into a AAA game, and that kind of thing happens less formally and more formally, and it's fine. Like, it's, I think that things have not ossified, things are still quite diverse. It's just that there is also this big area of, like, AAA games where they know the formula and they keep doing the formula, and that's fine too. I don't want to suggest that that's, like, wrong, but, there's room for both. There's room for both. Next question, vaguely relevant. Do you have a preference for old, parenthesis PS1 and earlier, that's what old means apparently, or new/newish, parenthesis PS2 and later games? So I guess that would be, everything up until games were, typically 3D, including that early age of, like, really janky 3D, and then more refined 3D. That's sort of the division here. If so, any particular reason why? I honestly don't think I do have a particular preference either way. I prefer good games. So there are newer games that actually require the new technology, and then there are newer games that just sort of take advantage of the new technology to have better graphics and such, and then there are newer games that, frankly, they should be, not using newer technology and newer graphics and all that kind of thing, but they have to because they're newer. So, like, whole new genres of games emerge that wouldn't have been possible in earlier eras. and those are good. And, like the Assassin's Creed series. I like the Assassin's Creed series. I've played a couple of them now, which I guess isn't even that new. But, like, the technology was just, you can't make something that is, so, like, they're kind of a successor to Prince of Persia. That's the most similar sort of genre they are, but essentially, that when you move that to 3D, it is a different genre of game. So there are whole new genres that are opened by new systems, and I like some of those new genres. And the genres that did not require that, as long as they make the game well, I don't think it particularly matters. I am neither enamored nor put off by, like, the retro aesthetic. It's fine, and I don't mind it, and also newer games are fine. Next question. Would you be interested in trying some Metal Max games? The development is led by a guy who hates the Dragon Quest. Well, at least we agree on one thing. Oh, that's very funny. So I'm not opposed to any series. If you want me to play a particular game, you should suggest it in my Discord server. That's where I do all of the polls and such. But I other than now knowing that the development is led by someone who hates the Dragon Quest series, I know nothing about it. I don't think I've ever heard of Metal Max. I have no idea what it is. Next question. How did you end up doing what you do now? Like, were you planning on being a YouTuber? Just to be clear, I'm not a YouTuber. This is, like, I stream for 4 hours once a week. This is like the hobbyist of the hobbies. So I am not a YouTuber. I am someone who YouTubes as a hobby. Sorry, that was not the full question. Were you planning on being a YouTuber? Was this just a spur-of-the-moment thing that took off? It did not take off. My channel gets, like, ones of views. Did you, and do you, still want to keep playing bootleg games? So that last question is sort of unrelated to the first one. So, I heard of the Final Fantasy NES bootleg, just, because it was, like, around. It was one of those things that, like, a lot of people talked about, and I had actually watched Let's Plays for a long time. I liked Kurt J. Mac, I liked Proton John, no past tense about it, I like Kurt J. Mac, I like Proton John. I'm not gonna list off, but I had watched, Let's Plays, and at least as, that game was sort of making the rounds of social media and such, I couldn't find anybody who seemed to vaguely know what they were doing a Let's Play of it, and so I wanted a Let's Play of it to exist. And, since I do enjoy watching Let's Plays, and so I thought, okay, I'll record this, we'll see what happens. As I recall, I immediately said I'm not going to do silly voices, and then that's become, like, my signature. And I violated that rule within the first episode of that recording. So it was just, I wanted that to exist. And so, as an aside, I also, had a little bit of background doing video editing. So, God, way back in high school, there was a group sponsored by the school that had, like, a video editing rig, and I'm not going to say the exact year, but suffice it to say, digital video editing at that time was not a common thing, and I somehow finagled my way into, like, the main editor role, for that video group, that digital video group, at my high school, and so I had like, as a hobby, video editing for a long time, that I hadn't really exercised in a while, but the result of that is that I was quite comfortable recording and editing videos that I sort of already knew how to do. Did you, so right, the second half of this question was, did you and do you still want to keep playing bootleg games? So what I play obscure games. My thing is obscure. I have tried in recent years to sort of expand obscure a bit because I feel like I was getting really, pigeonholed. So doesn't have to be bootlegs. I'm still perfectly open to bootlegs. Bootlegs are usually obscure. But I'm playing like a bootleg a year. I'm doing them less frequently, trying not to make it only bootlegs. I'm just playing obscure games, of which bootlegs are one category. We're 20 minutes in and like less than halfway. Cool. Good job answering fast. Next question, are there any specific franchises, game genres, or systems that you are not willing to play or even review games for? Yes, Dragon Quest. I have played 2 Dragon Quest games, and I despised both of them. I found them to be utterly awful, and like the comments I got from people who were, angry at me not liking Dragon Quest, a lot of them essentially were of the format, you're not playing it right. And I could wring your neck. So yeah, I don't play Dragon Quest anymore because I revile that game, not genre, franchise, and it hates me too. And I don't play, actual Pokemon games. I'm willing to play, like, bootlegged Pokemon games, but I don't play actual Pokemon games, okay, let me be more precise about this. I'm willing to play bootlegged Pokemon games if there's more to it than just, it is a Pokemon game that's had some, like, bootleg nonsense put on. I'm not gonna play one that's just a bad translation again. That's simply because a lot of people really care about Pokemon, and I never did. I have no background in it. I hate the collect 'em up genre. Like, I don't enjoy playing that. I'm perfectly willing to play it to see, like, an obscure game, but a Pokemon game isn't going to be obscure, so that's just off the list. Game genres, tower defense. I cannot stand tower defense. Tower defense is so I don't think that tower defense is just inherently a bad genre of game. It's just a genre I really don't enjoy. I can't stand it. That, like, hidden object game genre that I didn't even know existed until I found, like, 6 of them in the, was it the itch.io bundle? I don't even remember what bundle it was. But that, like, hidden object game genre, that my mom can enjoy those. I'm not gonna play those. Systems, no. There's no system that, so the thing is, if a system is terrible, it's probably terrible in exactly the kind of way that makes me want to play it, because it's obscure and strange. Next question. How much work goes into your review videos? So the only review videos that I have made are Obscuros Ludos, and God, it's been a few years since I made Obscuros Ludos videos. I'm sorry, I don't have time. This is just a hobby. And there's a further follow-up to this question. For example, is all the gameplay from you or others? What sources do you generally check for information? Are there any people you consult for information that the general public has no access to? Usually all the gameplay is from me. Obscuros Ludos has credit sequence, so you can see exactly where I got everything from in the credit sequence. Rarely have I had to consult anyone outside of, just checking the various wikis and trying to dig deep into the various wikis and find, like, so archive.org, occasionally you'll find, like, a magazine that mentions something. It's not really useful for bootlegs, but for, like, the Elder Scrolls Travels games, that's one of the only places you can find that they exist. I have consulted people who anybody notionally has access to, but who, I did have to actually, like, seek out a person rather than just, readily publicly available information. But again, the only review videos I've made are Obscuros Ludos, and those have credits, so you can see exactly where that all is. This next question is so related to the one 2 questions ago that is there a genre you prefer to play over all others? Puzzle games. Love puzzle games. I feel like, so I've said many times, Portal 2 is the best game ever made. 3D puzzle games, when they're done right, are really, really good. Yeah. 3D puzzle, but just puzzle broadly. I think the most important thing about a puzzle game is that it isn't a puzzle to understand the nature of the puzzle, it's a puzzle to understand the puzzle. So, like, fairly simple rules, fairly few rules, with intricate consequences. So, like, Baba Is You, brilliant game, because the rules are few and hugely impactful. So the Baba Is You, in as puzzle games go, like, almost perfection. Although I still say Portal 2 is the best game ever made, because Portal 2 is an easier game to pick up. So it's you know, if somebody who had never played a video game before wanted to play a video game, and they were, you know, young and healthy enough to sort of interact at the necessary speed with a computer, Portal 2. Next question. If your channel was more popular, would you be more active online as a streamer/YouTuber, or is this secondary and just a for fun thing to do? I have a job. I love my job. It does, you know, it's like a 9 to 5. I mean, it's not technically, but it, you know, like, think of it like that. There's like 40 hours a week that I'm doing my job. So you know, there's no way that this is ever going to be anything but that, even if somehow it was vastly more popular. The thing is, I don't want to go into personal details, but I have very good job security, and being a YouTuber is not good job security, so I'll keep the job security, thank you. Next question. What are some projects you started on your channel, whether they be Let's Plays, reviews, or other ideas that you would like to finish but just don't have the time for? I mean, the Obscuros Ludos videos is the answer to that. The only things I do on the actual Yahweasel channel are Let's Plays. The only reviews I make are Obscuros Ludos. So I'm notionally working on the Obscuros Ludos for Barber Battle Saga right now, and I mean, I'm like 4 games behind just in editing the Let's Plays, so it's not happening. Maybe one of these years. Obscuros Ludos is the answer. If like, you know, I make no money for this, but if I can afford to, like, pay an editor an appropriate editing fee to do Obscuros Ludos justice, then I'd like to do that. But given that this is just a hobby, you know, maybe I'll get back to it eventually. Next question. When you first got into bootleg gaming, what was your mindset going into it, and where is your mindset now? In other words, do you genuinely enjoy playing these mostly awful games, or is it just a compulsive habit for you? I just need another hit, man. Just need another one of those bootleg games. So, you may have noticed as I play these bootleg games that I pretty much always try to break them apart. So I've said many times, I am very good at programming. I am not a programmer, which is to say my job is not programming. I am a programmer in that I am a person who programs. My career is not programming, but I'm very good at programming. Because I grew up on the Commodore 64. That's, you know, programming first. So when I am coming into a bootleg, I do not try to detach the experience from the experience of, like, trying to pick it apart. They are the same thing. It's not that I'm genuinely trying to enjoy the actual gameplay experience. It's that I'm trying to pick apart what's going on, how this was built, what it is. And so that aspect of it I do genuinely enjoy. I also genuinely enjoy just the surreal nature that some of them have. and just the sheer weirdness, and the only way to really discover that is to go through the pain. Generally speaking, the actual, like, nitty gritty of playing the game, no, I don't particularly enjoy. But it's, it's a delayed gratification thing. You have to play to the end of the game to see that the game ends with a misspelling of I can't even say the word, a misspelling of congratulations on, like, a glitched out background. That, how else would I know that? And I enjoy seeing that kind of nonsense. Or, that the game, you get to a certain point and it just crashes and has a chord play permanently. So it's the picking them apart is what I enjoy, and playing them is a necessary part of doing that. Next question, are there any games that you would like to play, parenthesis, bootleg or otherwise, and parenthesis, but aren't sure you have the time, nor patience, nor an active enough audience for them? I don't think that an active audience, so the only thing that an active audience would matter for is something that really requires, like, multiple players, that for whatever reason I would want somebody who's an audience member as my co-op partner rather than, somebody I know who's also a YouTuber or just somebody I know. So I don't think the audience is going to stop me from any of that. I actually, so like I said, I sort of pigeonholed myself at a time in that I played, like, just bootleg games, and I kind of exhausted the most interesting bootleg games to me. There are a lot of, like, bootleg fighting games that I'm not that interested in because they don't tend to have, like, a story to them, so you can pretty much figure out all there is to it in about a minute. But in terms of the ones that are most interesting to me, I actually kind of exhausted them. There are games that, for none of these reasons, I would like to play but haven't. Things like the Brew games. Brew is a mobile phone, like the feature phone game platform that's really poorly preserved. Or for that matter, the Japanese mobile phone games from before and during J2ME and Brew that are just, like, really badly preserved and very, very hard to get to. So, like, I played MUDs, which are multi-user dimensions or multi-user dungeons. It was a text-based online kind of game, and I say was because mostly it was. They're just not as popular as they were even 20 years ago, and they were more popular 10 years before that. So given that they are multi-user, it's sort of logging on to Smog or something and finding that it's like this destitute ghost town. I don't know. It sounds like it maybe not that fun. So there's certain ones which, for technological or practical reasons, I haven't been able to play, but not really any that just for time or patience I haven't been able to play. Next question. As someone that has played both legitimate games and illegitimate games, are there any illegitimate games that surpass their legitimate counterparts? And as a side question, is there anything legitimate developer can learn from bootleg games besides obviously make a good game? Didn't I already get this question? This is just a similar question phrased differently. I answered the second part of that earlier. So there are, in terms of, like, are there any illegitimate games that surpass their legitimate counterpart? Like I said, when I talked about, lessons that could be learned, there are sort of two categories of bootleg games, and the category that actually, like, rips off a game is usually so much just, like, money grubbing that, no, honestly, no, there's nothing that they could learn. They tend to just be, like, terrible equivalents. The other category, there's now not a counterpart. So, there's lessons that can be learned from weird indie games, but that's, for a particular genre or something like that, there's not necessarily a counterpart. Next question, I have no idea what this means. Next question is pink or bacon? Pigs are pink? By pink, do you mean vagina? Vagina and bacon, actually both at least a bit overrated, but I'm going to go with vagina. Next question. What got you interested in obscure games? So I have an unrelated interest in obscure hardware. So like I have within arm's reach, I have an HP 200LX, which is a Palm Top from the very early games of Palm Top that runs DOS and has CGA graphics, so you can run very badly a bunch of DOS software on it. And I really enjoy these obscure platforms that try to be more than they are. There's something about the sort of attempt that is almost endearing while also being stupid and terrible. So like, when it's obscure but not bootleg is its own whole category. When it's obscure but not bootleg, quite often it is games that set their heights beyond what is achievable and, like, failed to reach those heights in glorious ways. So, like, the Resident Evil bootleg no, it wasn't a bootleg. God, the Resident Evil 2 game for the Gamecom that wasn't a bootleg. Like, you can see how much the poor developer of that tried to replicate the game, that it was just not happening. It was just not gonna happen, and it's so bad. That's what I enjoy. So it's this unrelated interest in sort of obscure hardware, and specifically this like idea of hardware or software that tries to be more than it is, or tries to be more than it can be, and fails in spectacular fashion. Next question. 36 minutes. Great. I'm about halfway through. No, I'm more than halfway through. Do you consider yourself a VTuber, a furry VTuber, or a tuber? Well, I'm not a root vegetable, so I'm not a tuber. So, okay. Let me address something here. Let me address something here. I have many times said that I am not a furry, and I realize that the only image you have of me is this adorable weasel character that I have created from a pun I made like 15 years ago or something. The reason I am not a furry is furry is a fetish. It always has been, it always will be. Every time a furry tells you, no, it's not a sex thing, they are lying to you. It is. It was always a fetish. It was always a sex thing. Furry is a fetish. I am not a part of the furry fetish community. But this is a anthropomorphic animal character, it's just a mask. I don't, like, identify with the Yahweasel character at all. It's just anonymity. I just don't want to, have my real self be out there, which is a good idea for anybody, frankly. So I consider myself a VTuber. I have given up on, like, caring if people consider me a furry, but to be abundantly clear, furry is a fetish. I am not a furry. Next question. This question starts with Yahweasel, period. Don't know why. Yahweasel, this is like a whole row of questions. Do you have a stubble? One stubble, please. Are you tall? Are you you? Are you hirsuted? Are you secretly handsome Squidward? Do you have stubble? So I have chops, like my facial hairstyle, I have chops and I have a soul patch, and I shave everywhere else, so I mean, I have stubble if I don't shave for a couple days. Are you tall? I am almost exactly average height for a man in America. I am not tall and also not short. Are you you? Yes. Cogito ergo sum. Are you hirsuted? Which means hairy. I mean, so obviously, Yahweasel, the character, is covered in fur. I'm actually, like, quite remarkably hairless. I am not particularly hairy. And I never watched SpongeBob, so I'm not even going to try to answer that next question. Next question. Saw you in an interview on Twitch about... On Twitch? Was that on Twitch? Did they? Oh, yeah, I guess, okay, I guess they did that on Twitch. Okay, anyway. Saw you on an interview on Twitch about Ennuicastr, and possibly another one. I was on 2 interviews about Ennuicastr. Did you manage to get those interviews because they approached you, or did you approach them? They approached me. I only once approached somebody offering to do an interview about Ennuicastr because they had unrelatedly sort of taken a look at it, and they didn't get back to me. They ghosted me. So the ones that have actually happened, they all approached me. Next question is, what happened to the the question is, what happened to the Omnicosm? I think you mean the Oknocosm? I had the Oknocosm, a very short-lived series, which was, so the idea was, give me your, Minecraft, worlds that you haven't, used in a while, and then I sort of, placed myself into it, and it was supposed to be like this survival show of being sent to all these different worlds. I can't act, and also nobody sent me enough levels. I had like 2, so that's what happened. Next question. What's your favorite thing you've ever made that isn't Craig? Well, it wouldn't be Craig anyway. So here's the thing. Yahweasel is a mask, and I have created things I am much more proud of in my real life than at all related to all of this nonsense. So I decline to answer. Next question. If Ennuicastr became popular enough that you could earn a living from it alone, would you quit your day job? So, as I mentioned in the related question, I have very good job security in my day job, and so probably not. If Ennuicastr was sufficiently popular that I had reason to believe that it would sustain me at least long enough that if things went belly up, I could, like, adjust. I'm not going to say it's impossible. It's unlikely, but I'm not going to say it's impossible. People say that you should change your job once every 5 or 10 years, depending on who you ask. I've been at this job for 8 years, maybe it's approaching time to change anyway. So right now, if tomorrow Ennuicastr was magically that popular, I would not do it. I'm not going to say that, if 3, 4, 5 years down the line that happens somehow, I'm not going to do it. I don't know. Next question. Can you answer anything? I mean, one valid answer to any question is I don't know, so yes, I can answer anything in that I can always either answer by refusing to answer, that is an answer, or answer by saying I don't know. Next question. What's your favorite game you've played on the channel? Ooh, I have no idea. Maybe Baba Is You? I have no idea. In terms of the games that are sort of within the wheelhouse of the channel that aren't like weird asides like Baba Is You, I still have no idea. Next question is, are you a spy? So in real life and here, I have a moral code that I do not lie. I do not lie. So it developed from the fact that when I was a youth, when I was a teenager in particular, I lied so much. I was an awful person. I hate the me that I was then. And I was terrible at it. I was really bad at it. I lied all the time, and I was bad at it. And so I developed a discomfort with lying that eventually sort of transformed itself into a creed not to lie. So I'm not a spy, and I would be a very bad spy because I don't lie, and it's kind of not a good thing. And I'm gonna say that anonymity is not a lie, because obviously, that I am not actually an anthropomorphic weasel, because that's nonsense. So, although I am not willing to reveal to you all truths about myself, I am also not willing to lie to you about them. I will, tell you that I'm not going to tell you something, but I'm not going to lie. Next question is, are you a drug fiend? I don't even drink. I don't drink alcohol. I am not that happy to occasionally have to use melatonin to get to sleep. I don't like anything. Next question. Are there other projects you do that people might want to know or are comfortable with people knowing that you are doing? The projects I do that are in the Yahweasel name, that are not, are part of this and not part of quote unquote real life, are all quite public. So there's the channel, and there's the various programming tasks that I never expected to be associated with this. So things like on Ennuicastr and Craig and such. And if you're interested in that, go to github.com/Yahweasel. Next question. Is there any aspect in which Canada is worse than the US? So I feel like I can only answer that really for like the place I came from and the place I moved to. I lived in a few places in the US, and only one place in Canada, and so I don't really feel like there's a fair way for me to answer that. Parliament is not a good system. The Westminster system is not a good system. And the fact that the official head of state is whoever the most inbred German they could find at the time is not an acceptable way to run a government. So what's weird is like the practical government of Canada I find less annoying, while the conceptual like government design of Canada is genuinely unacceptable. And on the other hand, I do think that the design of the U.S. government is better. There's like a proper division between legislative, executive, and judiciary, whereas in Canada, the legislative basically is the executive, and is pretty much supreme to the judiciary, and so basically there's just one governing body, which is not good. Separation of powers is good. But in the US, A, that's been eroded so much, and B, everybody's a moron, and so the actual, like, practical day-to-day government I do not prefer in the US, because Americans are very stupid. There's an Isaac Asimov quote. I'm not going to remember it exactly, but it's something like, there's a cult of ignorance in the United States based on the misbegotten idea that democracy means my stupid idea is just as good as your well thought out idea. And that comes through. There's that. And there's that in Canada too, but less so. So the government of Canada, in principle, I like less than the government of the United States, and it will not become a citizen of Canada so long as it retains the head of state being whoever the most inbred German they can find at the time is. I will say this proudly and quite rightly: the only good king is a dead king. I will happily piss on Queen Elizabeth II's grave. The only good monarch is a dead monarch. That is not an acceptable way for any country to operate. I don't care how much of a figurehead the person is. The only good monarch is a dead monarch. I am an American in at least that one way. Last question, which was actually the first question. So I'm gonna skip some of the background to get to the actual question part. What made you start a YouTube channel? I actually answered that. That was a previous question. I found the Final Fantasy VII NES bootleg. And was there a time when you felt like, screw this channel, it's not going anywhere, might as well forget about it? Yeah, many times. And what I finally did is just sort of casualize a lot. And so I've gone very, very casual with how I Let's Play. And I don't, specifically make episodes anymore. And I cut them into episodes, like, eventually. The thing that, if I had tried to sort of retain the same level of professionalism is not the right word, just like editing effort as I started with, then it would have driven me completely insane. So there was a video years ago of me just like, okay, I'm done. I'm going super casual now. I'm changing how I'm doing everything, and I've gone much more casual since then. And yeah, that was necessary. And so, when people say like, oh, if you did X, you could get more of it, my answer is no, I don't care. I don't care. Doing X, that sounds like doing something. I'm not going to do things. Well, my clock says 59 minutes and 30 seconds. So if I'm very fast, I can end this in under an hour. So that was all the questions that have been asked since the last AMA. I answered them with only offending a lot of people, I'm sure. That was good fun. Till next time, till the next ridiculously long AMA, goodbye.